What if Tanjiro and Nezuko met Yorichi in episode 1? How would replacing Tomioka with Yorichi in this scenario change the story of Demon Slayer? Well, for Tanjiro and Nezuko to meet Yorichi, he would have to be born in Tanjiro's era, just like his twin brother Kokushibo. And what changes would that imply right from the start? Look, as Tanjiro goes down the slope with Nezuko injured on his back, after seeing his whole family massacred by the King of Demons, his despair is interrupted by a presence that makes the very air vibrate. In front of them, it is not the water Hashira with his characteristic Haori, Giyu Tomioka, who appears, but rather Yorichi Tsugikuni, and upon finding the young girl transformed into a demon, his reaction is immediate. He draws his red blade, ready to extinguish the threat. As we know, Tanjiro would try to stop Yorichi, just as he tried with Tomioka, but he doesn't attack like an amateur. He uses a bold strategy, going after the creator of sun breathing. Yorichi sees potential in the young Kamado and decides to help him after knocking him out. And when he notices that Nezuko puts herself in front of her brother to protect him, he decides to spare her. Instead of Yorichi sending the youngsters to be under the tutelage of another Hashira, Yorichi decides to train young Kamado personally. The training is not focused on water breathing, but on the purity of the primordial breathing, the sun breathing. As we know, only a few have managed to master it, and those who did mastered a copy of it. Yorichi is afraid that Tanjiro, like the others, won't be able to master such breathing and will need another tutor. But for 2 years, Tanjiro is pushed to his limit, learning not only the basics of breathing techniques, but every movement of the sun breathing. Unlike in the original story, Tanjiro doesn't go to the final selection with just hope, but with the technical mastery of someone who was trained by the creator of breathing techniques. He easily passes the hunter's test and wins. He earns his own sword. After returning alive, Yorichi lets him go on his own with his sister because he believes that the sun must find its own path to shine. Tanjiro defeats his first demons until they arrive in Asakusa, where he meets Muzan Kibutsuji for the first time. This time, Muzan feels nothing when he sees Tanjiro, because in this timeline, he never met Yorichi. However, Muzan knows that since Yorichi began his journey fighting the demons, Muzan has lost many of his subordinates. That's why he still acts cautiously, but without fear of any demon slayer alive. Without this fear, he doesn't send Susamaru and Yahaba after Tanjiro. But by turning a human into a demon in the middle of the crowd, Muzan escapes Tanjiro's sight. And unlike the original storyline, where after this transformation, Tanjiro would meet Tamayo and Yushiro. But here, Tamayo is still under Muzan's control. And do you know why? See, since Yorichi never found Muzan to bring him close to his end, he never lost control. So, Tamayo would still be a servant of the King of the Demons. So, who will heal Nezuko? And more importantly, who will make a poison to contain this demon? These questions will be answered by the end, so don't go anywhere. At Kyogai's mansion, Tanjiro meets Inosuke and Zenitsu, who join the mission to stop the drum demon. When they arrive at Mount Natagumo to face Rui, lower 5, there isn't a prolonged life or death battle. Tanjiro moves at hypersonic speed, slicing through the steel threads and Rui's own neck as if they were mere pieces of empty flesh, without giving the demon any time to even process his defeat. In this scenario, Tanjiro managed to reach the lower moon without any difficulty, passing by Spider Mother and Spider Father alongside Inosuke. With no risk to her life, Nezuko also doesn't awaken her blood demon art, remaining closer to an ordinary demon. The journey culminates on the Mugen train, where Tanjiro, Nezuko, Inosuke, and Zenitsu would set out alongside Rengoku, the Flame Hashira, to stop the demons that are appearing on the train. When Enmu tries to put everyone to sleep, Tanjiro's mental strength, forged by Yorichi's rigorous training, allows him to wake up almost instantly. After easily defeating Lower Moon 1, the real trial by fire begins when the train derails. You know what happens now, right? Exactly. The Upper Moon 3 appears. The question is, was Yorichi's training enough for Tanjiro to fight alongside Rengoku and help the Flame Hashira defeat the third Upper Moon Akaza? Well, before I tell you, take this moment to grab your popcorn and help me share this theory with more people who need to see this happen. Just click the like button below, it doesn't cost anything, and it helps Kimetsu fans find this video. We're counting on you. Now look, with only 2 years of training, Tanjiro wouldn't have time to master the Slayer mark. The transparent world, the bright red blade, let alone have his movements refined to the level of an elite Hashira. We should also remember that in this timeline, chronologically, this is the first generation of demon slayers with breathing techniques, meaning the current Hashiras had direct contact with Yorichi. So, under the guidance of the strongest slayer, they would have extreme mastery over their breathing techniques, and Rengoku is a strong example of how this will make a difference in this story. Because in the original timeline, it's said that Rengoku didn't complete his training, and even so, he became a Hashira that everyone could rely on. Here, with complete training and a first-class mentor, Rengoku would be a monster. This time, Akaza would have to fight seriously against Rengoku. And not only that, he would also have to deal with Tanjiro, since he would be capable enough to help in the battle without getting in the way of the Flame Hashira. Despite the hunter's efforts, Akaza is still a monster, and at the peak of the battle, where Rengoku and Tanjiro were pushed to their limits by Upper Moon 3, both awakened their Demon Slayer marks, gaining a sinister power-up. The blow that would have pierced Rengoku's chest is stopped by Tanjiro, who was acting as a valuable support in the battle. And with the sunrise, Akaza retreats, leaving the two hunters exhausted but victorious. After all, the mission to protect everyone on the train was a tremendous success, with no casualties. Upon returning to Muzan, Akaza reports what happened, and this makes the King of Demons furious. Back at the headquarters of the Demon Slayer Corps, Tanjiro meets his master, Yorichi, again and asks for help to master the Demon Slayer mark and improve his movements, so that this time he can act as a direct fighter against the Upper Moons, and not just as support on the battlefield. When he finally recovers, Rengoku, the Flame Hashira, now an eyewitness to Tanjiro's potential, reports to Ubuyashiki about the potential of young Kamado. This prestige leads Tengen Uzui to recruit him for the entertainment district. This time, Tanjiro is not an apprentice trying to survive, he is a highly skilled predator. Upon entering the red light district, Tanjiro's sense of smell, refined by the transparent world that Yorichi began to awaken in him with this latest training, locates Daki within minutes. The battle is not a stalemate. Tanjiro moves at a speed bordering on hypersonic, surpassing the demon's reflexes before she can even summon her blood sashes. He decapitates her with surgical precision, forcing the immediate appearance of Gyutaro. But now Gyutaro does not face Uzui alone. He faces a Hashira and a Tanjiro who has already manifested the Demon Slayer mark under the stress of combat. The fight is short and devastating. Thanks to Tanjiro's support, Uzui doesn't lose his hand or his eye, staying in top shape to remain on the front lines of the Corps. All of this happens without Nezuko needing to leave the box. Since Tanjiro didn't damage his sword in the fight against him, Gyutaro doesn't need to travel to the Swordsmith village, which creates a security vacuum there, right? Actually, no. With Muichiro and Mitsuri there, now under the training of the creator of the primordial breathing, Muichiro and Mitsuri awaken their marks much earlier, and their skills, as shown earlier with Rengoku as an example, are on another level. Muichiro, just like in the original timeline, defeats Gyuko, but more easily than we imagined, and yes, using mist breathing, exactly. As a direct descendant, so to speak, of the Kokushibo and Yorichi bloodline in the original story, the potential for him to master either sun breathing or moon breathing, being a genius in the original timeline, is extremely viable. So, Muichiro defeats Gyoko with moon breathing. Mitsuri, on the other hand, manages to hold off Zuhakuten, while Genya runs to decapitate Rantengo. Obviously, it would be a difficult task for him, but I believe he could do it, because he would use bullet breathing to blow up the demon's body. With another victory for the Demon Slayers, Muzan would invade the Demon Slayer Corps, not to absorb Nezuko as he did in the original timeline, but to put an end to the one who is a thorn in his side. Buyashiki, sensing the danger and chaos, calls for the Hashira training with Yorichi, Tsugikuni, and my friends as the main mentors. The Demon Slayers get every possible power-up alongside that monster Yorichi. They are extremely strong and armed to the teeth, so to speak, against Muzan and his demons. When the invasion happens, Muzan is cornered. He takes everyone to his domain in the Infinity Castle. And this time, Nezuko, without a cure, will fight alongside the Demon Slayers in the Infinity Castle. But that's not all. Muzan is completely free after all. He wasn't poisoned either. But when the Demon Slayers prove to be much stronger than he expected, the plan is to divide and conquer. That's why he separates everyone in the Infinity Castle, fighting against a minimum number of Demon Slayers, which he could defeat. Meanwhile, the Hashiras, now marked and operating at a level of strength and speed that defies demon biology, spread out through the shifting rooms. Yorichi Tsugikuni walks with a calmness that terrifies the living walls of that fortress, searching for Muzan. Tanjiro, alongside Nezuko, encounters Kokushibo, the Upper Moon One. Or, should I say, Yorichi's twin brother who sought the same fate in this story. The intense battle. Tanjiro gives his all against Kokushibo. As the battle unfolds, Nezuko begins to awaken her abilities as a demon, which surprises Kokushibo. Although she may not be someone who plays a major role in this battle, Nezuko is crucial in helping Tanjiro land powerful blows on Kokushibo. And look, Tanjiro is as powerful as Upper Moon One, which pushes him to his limit, forcing him to enter his monster form. But before Kokushibo can overpower the Kamado siblings, a presence that makes the swordsman stop fighting enters the scene. It was Yorichi saying, "Step aside, young ones, this fight is mine." The battle between moon breathing and the original sun breathing is not just a duel of swords, it's a clash of concepts that distorts the space around them. While Kokushibo attacks with his crescent blades, Yorichi uses the mastery that makes him untouchable, but he allows Tanjiro and Nezuko to observe every move. Tanjiro doesn't just watch, he gets in sync with Yorichi's rhythm, seeing it for the first time. Seeing his master fight for real, taking in this battle and the true essence of sun breathing. Tanjiro isn't just observing, he's learning and mimicking Yorichi's movements in his mind. Finally, Yorichi, with extreme sorrow, puts an end to his own brother. But what about the other battles? Well, Rengoku, alongside Tomioka, puts an end to Akaza. Shinobu and Tengen exterminate Duma, the Upper Moon too. Tamai, as a replacement moon, met her long-awaited end at the hands of Gyomei. And the rest are scattered throughout the castle, trying to survive against Muzan. When Nakime is defeated and the castle finally collapses, everyone gathers around Muzan, who is left in disbelief after losing his upper moons. While Muzan was free in the castle, 3 casualties occurred: Iguro Obanai, Mitsuri Kanroji, and Muichiro Tokito. They gave their all to ensure that Muzan wouldn't corner the other Hashiras and Slayers. None of the Slayers present would let their deaths be in vain. That's why they give their all to stop Muzan. But in the end, the one who will truly bring Muzan to his knees is Yorichi, where, just like in the original timeline, he observed Muzan's multiple hearts and brains, developing the 13th form of sun breathing. And by performing such a move, Yorichi cuts all of his internal organs at once. Without Tamayo's poison, Muzan can still blow himself up into 1,200 pieces, and that's exactly what he does in a desperate attempt to escape. Unfortunately, in the original timeline, Yorichi couldn't stop all of Muzan's pieces, but here it's different. Everyone is there to help him. Everyone, without exception, rushes to cut the pieces of Muzan's flesh that explode toward the sky. The last piece, no less important, isn't sliced. It's burned by Nezuko's blood demon art. With the fall of the Demon King, the demons disintegrate, and humanity enters a new era of peace, where Yorichi's technique is finally passed on without the fear of extinction. But what about Nezuko? Well, unfortunately, without someone who can heal her, Nezuko would be disintegrated just like the other demons. But she would go to the other world in peace, knowing that her brother could live a peaceful life alongside his new friends. If you enjoyed this story, I'm sure you'll love this theory I picked out for you. Just click on the screen and I'll see you there, otaku. Subscribe.